The champagne flute trembled in Alara's fingers as she watched her former pack celebrate the winter solstice ball. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured rainbows across the marble dance floor. Silk gowns swirled in rivers of crimson and gold. The elite of the Silverbrook pack moved through the grand ballroom like sharks through glittering waters, all sharp smiles and sharper whispers. And Alara stood alone by the pillar, wishing she could disappear into the stone. She shouldn't have come. 3 years away from this place, 3 years of building a new life far from the whispers and the pitying glances, and one invitation had undone all of it: her cousin's mating ceremony, family obligation. The words had felt like chains around her throat when she'd read them. But she'd come anyway, because somewhere beneath the scar tissue, a foolish part of her still hoped things might be different. They weren't. Well, well. Look what crawled back. The voice slithered down her spine like ice water. Ilara's wolf bristled, hackles rising at a threat she knew too well. Marcus Vane emerged from the crowd, his dark hair slicked back, his cruel mouth curved in the smile that still haunted her nightmares. He wore his wealth-like armor, tailored suit, gold cufflinks, a watch that cost more than most wolves earned in a year. Behind him trailed his entourage, beta wolves with hungry eyes and mocking grins, and on his arm, draped in emerald silk that matched her calculating gaze, stood Celeste, the woman Marcus had chosen after discarding Alara like yesterday's garbage. Marcus. Alara forced his name past numb lips. I didn't realize you'd be here. It's my territory, darling. Where else would I be? He stopped close enough that she could smell his cologne, the same woodsy scent that once made her heart race. Now it only made her stomach turn. The real question is why you're here. I thought you'd learned your lesson about showing your face among civilized wolves. Celeste laughed, the sound like breaking glass. Maybe she's hoping to find a mate at last. Isn't that precious? The words hit their mark with surgical precision. Around them, conversations faltered. Heads turned. Ilara could feel the weight of dozens of stares pressing down on her shoulders. I'm here for my cousin's ceremony, she said quietly. Nothing more. Of course you are. Marcus circled her slowly, his eyes dragging over her simple blue dress with theatrical disappointment. Still no husband, I see. No mate. No pack willing to claim you. He clicked his tongue in mock sympathy. 3 years, Alara. 3 years. And you're still the rejected little Omega nobody wanted. Heat flooded her cheeks. Her wolf snarled inside her chest, demanding she fight back, but the words lodged in her throat like thorns. It's not her fault, really, Celeste added, examining her manicured nails with studied boredom. Some wolves are simply born to be alone. Defective stock, as my mother would say. Laughter rippled through the watching crowd. Alara's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. She should leave. She should turn and walk away with whatever dignity she had left. But her feet wouldn't move, her body frozen by the same paralyzing shame that had defined her entire life in this pack. Tell me. Marcus leaned closer, his breath hot against her ear. Does it hurt? Watching everyone around you find their place while you remain worthless? Do you lie awake at night, wondering what's wrong with you? Why no alpha would ever want damaged goods like, that's quite enough. The voice cut through the ballroom like a blade through silk. Deep, commanding, carrying an authority that made every wolf in the room instinctively lower their eyes. Alara's heart stopped. The crowd parted like water before a storm, and through the gap strode a man who made Marcus look like a boy playing dress-up. He was tall, impossibly tall, with shoulders broad enough to block out the chandelier light. Dark hair fell across a face carved from granite, all sharp angles and harder edges. But it was his eyes that stole her breath. Silver, like molten moonlight, burning with barely contained power that made the air itself seem to tremble. Every wolf in the ballroom dropped to one knee. Every wolf except Alara, who stood frozen, staring at the impossible figure before her. Marcus's face had gone the color of old milk. Alpha King, he stammered, scrambling to kneel. We weren't expecting. That is, we didn't know. Clearly. The Alpha King's gaze swept over Marcus with the casual contempt one might show an insect. Then those silver eyes found Alara, and something shifted in their depths. Something warm, something possessive, something that looked terrifyingly like tenderness. My love, he said, extending his hand toward her. I apologize for my tardiness. The council meeting ran longer than expected. The silence that followed was absolute. Alara stared at his offered hand, her mind spinning wildly. She had never met this man, had never even seen him except in paintings and whispered legends. The Alpha King, the Bloody Wolf, the most powerful shifter alive, and he was looking at her like she was the only person in the room. She started, her voice barely a whisper. His silver eyes held hers, and in their depths she saw a question, a choice. Play along, they seemed to say, and I'll give you the revenge you deserve. Her wolf surged forward with sudden, fierce certainty. Alara placed her hand in his. The Alpha King's fingers closed around hers, warm and strong and impossibly gentle. He drew her toward him, tucking her against his side like she belonged there. Like she'd always belonged there. Allow me to introduce my wife, he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the silent ballroom. Alara, Queen of Shadowmere, the woman I chose above all others. Behind them, Marcus made a sound like a dying animal. And for the first time in 3 years, Alara smiled. 15 minutes later, Alara found herself in a private antechamber with her hand still clasped in the Alpha King's grip, and her mind still reeling from what had just happened. You can breathe now, he said, a hint of amusement warming his cold voice. They can't see us here. Alara sucked in air like a drowning woman. What? Who? Why did you? So many questions. He released her hand and moved to the window, his massive frame silhouetted against the moonlight. Let's start with introductions. I'm Kale. And you, unless my sources are mistaken, are Alara of the former Moonridge Pack. How do you know who I am? I know many things. He turned to face her, those silver eyes unreadable. I know your pack was destroyed by raiders 4 years ago. I know you fled to Silverbrook seeking refuge with distant relatives. And I know that Marcus Vane courted you for 6 months before publicly rejecting you at your own engagement ceremony, claiming you were... He paused, distaste flickering across his features. Insufficiently pure for his bloodline. The old wound tore open fresh. You seem remarkably well informed about my humiliations. I make it my business to know about interesting people. He moved closer, and despite everything, Ilara's wolf didn't retreat. If anything, she pressed forward, drawn to his presence like a moth to flame. You survived your pack's destruction. You rebuilt your life from nothing. And when that life was torn away again, you didn't break. You left. I ran away, she corrected bitterly. There's a difference. Is there? His head tilted, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Running toward something can look the same as running away, depending on where you stand. And where do you stand, Alpha King? Kale, he corrected. And right now, I stand at a crossroads. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a folded document. 3 months ago, my council demanded I take a mate. Political alliances, succession concerns, the usual tedious requirements of power. I refused every candidate they presented. Alara's throat tightened. Why? Because they were all the same. Ambitious families offering ambitious daughters, each one trained from birth to smile and scheme and produce heirs on command. His lip curled. I wanted something different. Someone real. And you think I'm real? I think you're the first woman I've met who looked at Marcus Vane with the same disgust I feel. A ghost of a smile crossed his harsh features. That alone makes you more qualified than any noble-born candidate. Ilara's laugh came out slightly hysterical. So you barged into a ball and claimed a complete stranger as your wife because we share a mutual dislike of the same awful man? Partly. He unfolded the document and held it out to her. And partly because I've spent 3 months searching for someone exactly like you. She took the paper with trembling hands. A marriage contract. Her name was already printed beside his, the terms outlined in precise legal language. 3 years of marriage in exchange for full protection of the Shadowmere Pack, generous financial compensation, and at the end, should she wish it, a quiet annulment with no questions asked. You planned this, she breathed. I plan to offer you a choice. His voice softened, losing some of its commanding edge. What happened in that ballroom was improvisation. I hadn't intended to announce anything tonight, but when I saw how they were treating you, something dark flickered in his eyes. I found I couldn't simply watch. Why me? The question tore from her chest. There are thousands of wolves who would kill for this opportunity. Beautiful wolves, powerful wolves, wolves who could actually benefit your kingdom. Why would you choose someone like me? Kel was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. Because when you stood in that ballroom, surrounded by people who wanted to destroy you, you didn't cry. You didn't beg. You didn't break. He reached out, and his fingers brushed her cheek with devastating gentleness. You lifted your chin and prepared to face them alone. That's not weakness, Ilara. That's the kind of strength empires are built on. Her wolf keened at his touch, desperate and confused and achingly hopeful. This is insane, she whispered. Probably, he agreed. But I've found that sanity is overrated. He stepped back, giving her space to think. You have until dawn to decide. If you sign the contract, we leave for Shadowmere immediately. If you don't, he shrugged. I'll ensure you have safe passage to wherever you wish to go, and we'll never speak of this again. Ilara stared at the contract in her hands. 3 years. A fake marriage to the most powerful wolf alive. Protection, security, revenge on everyone who had ever made her feel worthless. It was madness. It was also the first time anyone had ever chosen her. Dawn, she repeated. Dawn, he confirmed. And with a final nod, he turned and disappeared into the shadows, leaving her alone with a decision that would change everything. She signed the contract at sunrise. The journey to Shadowmere took 3 days, each mile carrying Ilara further from the life she'd known and closer to a future she couldn't begin to imagine. Cale traveled beside her in the ornate carriage, but they spoke little. He seemed content to let her process the enormity of what she'd agreed to. And enormous it was. The Alpha King's territory sprawled across the northern mountains, a vast wilderness of snow-capped peaks and ancient forests. His keep rose from the highest summit like a dark crown, its black stone towers reaching toward clouds that never seemed to part. Shadowmere, Cale said as the carriage crested the final ridge. My father built it from the ruins of a forgotten kingdom. Some say it's cursed. Is it? All places of power carry ghosts. His silver eyes found hers. The question is whether you're willing to live among them. The gates opened to reveal a courtyard full of warriors. Unlike the soft, perfumed wolves of Silverbrook, these were battle-hardened fighters with scars and suspicious eyes. They watched Ilara descend from the carriage with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. They don't seem pleased to meet their new queen, she murmured. They don't know you yet. Cale's hand settled on the small of her back, a gesture of possession that made her wolf purr despite her nerves. Give them time. A tall warrior approached, his scarred face professionally blank. Commander Theron, Kyle introduced. My right hand. Theron's bow was correct but cold. My queen. Welcome to Shadowmere. Thank you. Ilara tried to project confidence she didn't feel. I look forward to learning about my new home. Something flickered in Theron's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or grudging respect. Before he could respond, a commotion near the keep's entrance drew everyone's attention. So this is the mysterious bride. The man who emerged from the shadows shared Kale's dark coloring, but where the king was carved granite, this wolf was polished obsidian, smooth, gleaming, and somehow more dangerous for his elegance. His smile didn't reach his pale eyes. My cousin, Kale said, and Ilara heard the warning in his tone. Lord Brennan. Cousin. Brennan's gaze crawled over Ilara like insects on skin. When we heard you'd finally chosen a mate, we expected more. Did you? It wasn't a question. The council certainly did. A political alliance, perhaps. A daughter of one of the great houses. Brennan circled Ilara slowly, and she forced herself to stand still under his inspection. Instead, you bring us an Omega refugee from a dead pack. How unconventional. I wasn't aware my marriage required the council's approval. It doesn't. Brennan's smile sharpened. But their support does, and support is earned, not commanded. Even for kings. The tension between the two men crackled like lightning before a storm. Ilara's wolf growled low in her chest, sensing threats she didn't fully understand. Lord Brennan, she said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. I understand your concerns. I'm not what anyone expected. She met his pale gaze without flinching. But I've learned that expectations are often wrong. Give me time to prove my worth, and I think you'll find I'm exactly what Shadowmere needs. Brennan's eyebrows rose. For a moment, something like genuine interest crossed his features. Well, he murmured, perhaps there's more to you than meets the eye. He sketched an ironic bow. Welcome to the family, Queen Ilara. I do hope you survive it. He swept away before she could respond, his entourage following like shadows. You handled that well. Kyle's voice was low, meant only for her. Brennan tests everyone, most fail. Did I pass? You intrigued him. That's rarer. His hand found hers, squeezing briefly. Come, I'll show you to your chambers. The queen's suite occupied an entire tower, all soaring windows and velvet draperies in shades of deep blue. A fire crackled in the massive hearth, and fresh flowers adorned every surface, an unexpected touch of softness in the fortress's harsh grandeur. The servants will attend to your needs, Kale said from the doorway. If you require anything... Wait. Ilara turned to face him. Why separate chambers? If we're meant to convince people this marriage is real... Something unreadable flickered across his features. The marriage is real, the contract is binding, but I won't force intimacy where none exists. He paused, choosing his words carefully. You agreed to be my queen, Ilara. You didn't agree to share my bed. That choice remains yours, if and when you wish to make it. The consideration in his words made her chest ache. You're not what I expected, she admitted softly. Neither are you. His silver eyes held hers for a moment that stretched like honey. Rest tonight. Tomorrow, we begin the work of convincing my court that their king chose wisely. He was gone before she could respond, the door closing softly behind him. Ilara sank onto the edge of the massive bed, her mind spinning. 12 hours ago, she'd been a nobody. A rejected Omega drowning in champagne and humiliation. Now she was a queen. And somewhere in the dangerous halls of Shadowmere Keep, her fake husband was already becoming something far more complicated than she'd bargained for. 3 months passed faster than Ilara thought possible. She'd expected coldness from Shadowmere's wolves. She'd prepared for hostility, for whispers, for the same rejection she'd faced her entire life. Instead, she found something unexpected. Purpose. The pack needed a queen who did more than smile and wave. They needed someone willing to work. And work Ilara did, throwing herself into every task with desperate determination. She learned the names of every servant, every guard, and every child in the keep. She sat with the elders and listened to their stories. She trained with the warriors until her muscles screamed, determined to prove she was more than just an Omega. And slowly, impossibly, they began to accept her. "You're different than we expected," Mira confessed one evening as she helped Ilara dress for dinner. The young servant had become something close to a friend over the past weeks. "When we heard the king was bringing home a mate, we thought she'd be like the others. Cold, political. But you actually care about us." "Why wouldn't I?" Ilara asked. Mira's expression turned sad. "Because no one else ever has." The words haunted her as she descended to the great hall. Shadowmere was strong, yes, but it was also wounded. Kale's focus on military might had left other needs neglected. The pack craved warmth as much as they craved protection, and somehow, without meaning to, Ilara had begun to provide it. Kyle noticed too. "The servants adore you," he remarked one evening as they shared a quiet dinner in his study. These private meals had become routine over the past month, a chance to discuss pack business away from watching eyes. Even Theron has stopped glowering every time you enter a room. Theron glowers at everyone. It's his natural expression. Kale's lips twitched. "Perhaps, but he glowers at you less than most." His silver eyes studied her over the rim of his wine glass. "You've exceeded every expectation, Ilara. The council is impressed. And you?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "Are you impressed?" Something shifted in his gaze, something heated and hungry that made her breath catch. "I am many things when it comes to you." His voice dropped low. "Impressed barely scratches the surface." The air between them thickened. Ilara's wolf pressed forward, desperate for something she'd been denying herself for months. Proximity to Kale had become a slow torture. Every accidental touch, every lingering glance, every moment alone in his presence wound her tighter until she thought she might snap. "Kale," she whispered. He set down his wine glass with deliberate care. "Be certain," he said roughly. "Whatever happens next, be absolutely certain it's what you want." "I'm certain." She stood, closing the distance between them. "I've been certain for weeks. I was just too afraid to—" His kiss swallowed the rest of her words. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was 3 months of restrained hunger unleashed in a single devastating moment. His hands tangled in her hair, her back met the wall, and Ilara finally understood why poets wrote about fire. "Mine," he growled against her lips. "From the moment I saw you in that ballroom, you were mine." "Yours," she agreed breathlessly. "Always yours." They didn't make it to his chambers that night. The study floor sufficed. After, wrapped in his arms before the dying fire, Ilara traced the scars that mapped his chest. So many battles, so many years of violence. And yet, with her, he was impossibly tender. "I need to tell you something," she murmured. "Anything. The contract. The 3 years." She lifted her head to meet his eyes. "I don't want them anymore." His expression shuddered. "You wish to leave?" "No." She laughed at the panic she saw beneath his careful mask. "I want to stay. Not because of a contract. Because of you." She pressed her palm against his chest, feeling his heart thunder beneath her touch. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe it was the first night, when you gave me my dignity back. Maybe it was every night since, when you showed me what real strength looks like. But somewhere along the way, this stopped being fake for me." Kale was silent for so long that fear began to creep into her chest. Then his hand covered hers, pressing it harder against his heart. "I never told you why I really chose you," he said quietly. You said you wanted someone real. I did, but there was more. His silver eyes burned into hers. 20 years ago, raiders destroyed a pack called Moonridge. Most were killed. A few survivors scattered. I was 12, and I swore that one day I would find them, protect them, give them a home. Alara's breath stopped. Moonridge was my pack. I know. His thumb stroked across her knuckles. I've been watching over the survivors for years. Most didn't want to be found. But you were different. Stronger. More alive despite everything you'd lost. When my council demanded I take a mate, you were the only choice I could imagine making. You chose me before we ever met. I chose the possibility of you. He pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. Meeting you only confirmed what I already knew. You belong here, Ilara. You belong with me. And if you'll have me, not as a contract, not as an arrangement, but as your true mate, I swear I will spend the rest of my life making you glad you stayed. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Yes, she whispered. Yes. His kiss tasted like salt and joy and forever. Neither of them knew that across the mountains, in the territory of the Thornwood Pack, Marcus Vane was reading a very old document, a document that mentioned a debt, a pledge, and a female named Alara who had been promised to him long before any Alpha King entered the picture. War was coming, and it would arrive with the next sunrise. The morning after the fertility blessing ceremony, Alara woke to an empty bed. She reached across the silk sheets, her fingers finding only cold linen where Kale's warmth should have been. The disappointment that flickered through her chest surprised her with its intensity. 3 months of marriage, and she still wasn't used to waking beside him. Still wasn't used to the way her heart stuttered whenever he looked at her with those molten silver eyes. A knock at the chamber door pulled her from her thoughts. "My queen," Mira's voice carried through the heavy oak. "The Alpha King requests your presence in the war room, immediately." Alara's blood ran cold. In 3 months, Kale had never summoned her to the war room. That space was reserved for battle strategy, for matters of life and death. Something was terribly wrong. She dressed quickly, foregoing the elaborate gowns the servants usually insisted upon for a simple blue dress that wouldn't restrict her movement. Her wolf paced restlessly beneath her skin, sensing danger she couldn't yet see. The war room sat at the heart of Shadowmere Keep, a circular chamber carved from black granite and lit by flickering torches. Maps covered every surface, and the massive oak table at its center bore the scars of 100 strategic debates. When Alara entered, she found Kale surrounded by his inner circle. Commander Theron stood rigid at his right hand, his scarred face darker than she'd ever seen it. General Voss, the eldest of Kale's advisors, traced a path across one of the maps with trembling fingers, and in the corner, watching everything with calculating eyes, lurked Lord Brennan. But it was Kale's expression that stopped her heart. Gone was the tender husband who had held her through the night. In his place stood the Alpha King in full terrible glory, his silver eyes blazing with barely contained fury, his massive frame coiled with predatory tension. "Show her," he commanded, his voice like grinding stone. Commander Theron stepped forward, holding a scroll sealed with black wax. "This arrived at dawn, my queen, from the Thornwood Pack." Alara's stomach dropped. Thornwood. Marcus's pack. Her fingers trembled as she broke the seal and unrolled the parchment. The words swam before her eyes, but their meaning struck like a blade to the gut. "To the so-called Alpha King of Shadowmere, you have stolen what belongs to me." The female Alara was promised to Thornwood through sacred tradition. "Her father's debts bound her to our pack long before you interfered with your gold and your empty titles. I invoke the right of reclamation. By ancient law, you must surrender her at the next full moon, or face the consequences of defying traditions older than your bloodline. She was mine first. She will be mine again." Marcus Vane, Alpha of Thornwood. The scroll slipped from Alara's numb fingers. He can't, she whispered, her voice cracking. That law hasn't been invoked in centuries. It's barbaric. It's also still binding. Lord Brennan interjected smoothly, stepping from the shadows. The right of reclamation was never formally abolished. If your father truly pledged you to settle his gambling debts before your marriage to our king, he let the implication hang in the air like poison. My father made many promises in his cups. Alara shot back, anger replacing her fear. None of them were legal contracts. Can you prove that? Brennan's smile was thin as a knife's edge. Can you produce documents showing no agreement existed? Because Marcus Vane claims he has witnesses, elders who saw the pledge made. Alara's heart hammered against her ribs. She remembered those nights. Her father stumbling home reeking of ale and desperation, making promises to anyone who would extend his credit. Had he truly pledged her? Had he sold his only daughter to cover his debts without even telling her? It doesn't matter. Cale's voice cut through the room like a blade. Every head turned toward him. She is my wife, my queen, my mate. His silver eyes found hers, and something fierce and possessive burned in their depths. I don't care what ancient laws Marcus Vane digs up from the grave. Ilara belongs to Shadowmere now. She belongs to me. The words sent heat flooding through her chest even as terror gripped her throat. With respect, my king, General Voss said carefully. If we refuse the right of reclamation without legal grounds, it could unite the other pacts against us. Many of the old families still honor the ancient laws. They would see our refusal as tyranny. Then let them come. Cale's power rolled through the room, making even his hardened warriors flinch. Let them all come. I'll bury every wolf who tries to take her from me. And start a war that could destroy everything we've built? Brennan's voice dripped with false concern. All for one female? Surely, cousin, there are other ways to... Choose your next words very carefully. Cale's tone dropped to something deadly quiet. That female you dismiss so easily is your queen. The next person who suggests I surrender her will learn exactly why they call me the Bloody King. Silence crashed through the war room. There may be another way. Commander Theron spoke into the heavy silence. The right of reclamation can be challenged through trial by combat. If someone defeats Marcus Vane in single combat, the claim is nullified permanently. Hope flickered in Alara's chest. Cale could. No. Theron shook his head grimly. By law, the challenger cannot be the current mate. It must be a champion chosen by the claimed female. Alara's hope crumbled to ash. Who could she possibly ask to fight Marcus? He was brutal, cunning, and utterly without mercy. Anyone who faced him would likely die. When is the full moon? She heard herself ask. 3 weeks, General Voss replied. 3 weeks to find a champion. 3 weeks to prepare for a battle that could determine her fate. 3 weeks before Marcus Vane came to reclaim what he believed was rightfully his. Cale crossed the room in 3 powerful strides, his hands cupping her face with unexpected gentleness. Listen to me, he said, his voice low and fierce. I will find a way. I will burn the entire world before I let him touch you. Do you understand? She stared into those silver eyes, eyes that had seen battlefields and bloodshed, eyes that had watched enemies fall by the thousands, and saw something she'd never expected to find there. Fear. The Alpha King, the most powerful wolf alive, was afraid. Not of Marcus, not of war. He was afraid of losing her. I understand, she whispered. But even as she spoke the words, a darker thought coiled through her mind. Marcus had witnesses, elders who would swear her father had pledged her. And somewhere in the back of her memory, a terrible suspicion began to take root. What if her father really had sold her? And what if Marcus had proof? The days that followed blurred together in a haze of tension and dread. Ilara threw herself into researching the right of reclamation, spending hours in Shadowmere's vast library surrounded by crumbling texts and faded scrolls. The ancient law was even more brutal than she'd feared. If no champion defeated Marcus before the full moon, she would be forcibly transferred to Thornwood, and Kale would be forbidden by sacred tradition from interfering. The other packs would ensure it. They were already watching, already whispering. The Bloody King's common bride had brought ancient shame upon the realm. How delicious it would be to see her dragged back to where she belonged. "You need to eat." Alara looked up from her research to find Mira standing in the library doorway, a tray of food balanced in her hands. The young servant's face was pinched with worry. "I'm not hungry." The king commanded it. Mira set the tray on the table with a firmness that brooked no argument. "He said if you waste away before he can save you, he'll have my head." Despite everything, a small smile tugged at Alara's lips. "He wouldn't dare." "No," Mira agreed softly. "He wouldn't. But he would tear apart anyone else who let harm come to you." She hesitated, then added, "He loves you, my queen. Everyone can see it. Even Lord Brennan, though he'd rather swallow his own tongue than admit it." Love. The word settled in Alara's chest like an ember refusing to die. Did Kale love her? He'd never said the words. Their marriage had been sudden, born from circumstance rather than courtship. She'd assumed his protectiveness was merely alpha instinct, the drive to guard what belonged to him. But the fear in his eyes that day in the war room. "My queen," Commander Theron's voice interrupted her thoughts. He stood in the doorway, his scarred face grave. "You have a visitor." Alara's heart seized. "Marcus?" "No. Someone from your past. A female who claims to be your sister." For a moment, Alara couldn't breathe. Rosalind, her younger sister, the golden child who had stayed behind when Alara fled, who had chosen their father's cruelty over uncertain freedom. "Send her in." The woman who entered bore little resemblance to the bright-eyed girl Alara remembered. Rosalind's blonde hair hung lank around a face that had grown thin and sharp. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her dress, once fine, showed signs of repeated mending. "Ilara." Rosalind's voice cracked on her name. "I didn't believe it when I heard. The rejected Omega, queen of the mightiest pack in the realm." Her laugh was bitter. "Father would have choked on his ale." "Father is dead." The words came out harder than Alara intended. "I received word 3 months ago." "I know. I buried him." Rosalind's jaw tightened. "Alone, because my sister had abandoned us for her new life of luxury." Guilt stabbed through Alara's chest, but she forced it down. "I didn't abandon you. I invited you to come with me. You refused." "I couldn't leave him. He was sick, Alara. Dying. Someone had to stay." The sisters stared at each other across the library, years of hurt and resentment crackling between them. "Why are you here, Rosalind?" Her sister's composure cracked. Tears spilled down her gaunt cheeks as she reached into her worn satchel and pulled out a yellowed piece of parchment. "Because of this." She thrust the document toward Alara with trembling hands. "Father's debts. The real ledger, not the one he showed to creditors. I found it hidden in his study after he died." Alara took the parchment, her eyes scanning the cramped handwriting. Column after column of debts, payments, promises. And there, near the bottom, written in her father's unmistakable scrawl, "Pledged, Alara, to Marcus Vane of Thornwood, in exchange for full forgiveness of gambling debts totaling 500 gold pieces, witnessed by Elder Hammond, Elder Crew, and Elder Blackwood." The document slipped from her fingers. "It's real," she whispered. "He actually did it." "I'm so sorry." Rosalind was crying openly now. "I didn't know until I found this. I swear I didn't know. Father kept it hidden, and Marcus has been visiting Thornwood, gathering those elders, preparing his case. He's been planning this for months, Alara. Maybe years." The world tilted sideways. All this time, Marcus had been waiting, watching, letting her think she'd escaped, letting her build a new life, a new future. And now, when she finally had everything she'd ever dreamed of, he was coming to tear it all away. The document, Ilara forced out. Does Marcus know you have it? Rosalind shook her head frantically. No, I stole it before he could find it. But Ilara, there are copies. The elders have their own records. Even if we destroy this one, it won't matter. Ilara's voice sounded distant to her own ears. The law only requires witness testimony. The document just confirms what they'll swear to anyway. Then what do we do? Before Ilara could answer, the library doors burst open. Kale stood in the entrance, his silver eyes wild, his chest heaving as if he'd run the length of the keep. The border scouts just reported. His voice was raw with fury. Marcus isn't waiting for the full moon. He's gathered an army. 300 wolves, camped 2 days' march from our territory. That's against the law, Ilara breathed. The right of reclamation forbids military force. He claims it's a diplomatic escort, a show of respect for ancient traditions. Kale's laugh was savage. But my scouts counted siege weapons among their supplies. He's not coming to negotiate, Ilara. He's coming to take you by force if the law doesn't deliver you first. The room spun around her. War. Marcus was bringing war to Shadowmere's doorstep. For her. Because of her. I should go to him. The words tore from her throat before she could stop them. If I surrender now, before anyone else gets hurt. No. Kale was across the room in an instant, his hands gripping her shoulders, his face inches from hers. You don't get to sacrifice yourself. Not for me. Not for this pack. Not for anyone. People will die, Kale. Your people. Because Marcus wants me. Then I'll kill him. The alpha power in his voice made the very air tremble. I'll kill anyone who threatens you. I told you in the war room, I'll burn the world before I let him have you. You can't fight in the trial, she whispered. The law. Damn the law. His forehead pressed against hers, his breath hot on her lips. Damn every law that says I can't protect what's mine. Ilara's heart cracked open. In that moment, with his hands on her shoulders and his silver eyes blazing with desperate devotion, she knew. Kale loved her. And she loved him. The realization crashed through her like a tidal wave, drowning every doubt, every fear, every lingering question about why the Alpha King had chosen her. I'll find a way, she breathed against his lips. I'll find a champion. I'll fight Marcus myself if I have to. But I won't let you start a war for me, Kale. I won't let you destroy everything you've built. You are everything I've built. His voice broke on the words. Don't you understand that yet? Before you, I was just the bloody king, feared, obeyed, alone. You made me something more. You made me want to be something more. A sob caught in her throat. In the doorway, forgotten by them both, Rosalind watched with tears streaming down her face, and in her mind a desperate plan began to form. If Ilara couldn't fight in the trial, and Kale was forbidden by law from standing as champion, then perhaps there was another way to save her sister, a way that would cost Rosalind everything. The night before the full moon, Ilara couldn't sleep. She stood on the balcony of the royal chambers, the cold mountain air biting her skin through her thin nightgown. Below, Shadowmere's warriors prepared for battle, their torches creating rivers of fire in the darkness. 300 of Kale's finest against 300 of Marcus's wolves. If the trial failed, if no champion emerged, the ancient law would deliver her to Thornwood, and Kale would go to war regardless. Either way, blood would flow. You're shivering. Kale's arms wrapped around her from behind, his warmth enveloping her like a shield. She leaned back into his chest, drawing strength from his presence. I can't stop thinking about tomorrow, she admitted. I know. His lips brushed her temple. Neither can I. If I don't find a champion, you will. His arms tightened. And even if you don't, I won't let him take you. I don't care what it costs. Alara turned in his embrace, her hands pressing against his chest. Kale, promise me something. His silver eyes searched her face. Anything. If things go wrong tomorrow, if Marcus wins, if he takes me, promise me you won't throw your life away trying to get me back. Promise me you'll live, find someone else, build a family, be happy. His expression shattered. You're asking me to let you go. I'm asking you to survive. I can't. His voice was ragged. Alara, I can't. These past 3 months with you, they've changed everything. Before you, I thought I knew what power meant. I thought ruling was enough. But you showed me what it feels like to have something worth protecting. Something worth dying for. Kale, I love you. The words fell from his lips like a confession torn from his very soul. I should have said it sooner. I should have said it every day since I first saw you in that market square, looking like you were ready to fight the whole world with nothing but your bare hands. I love you, Alara. And if Marcus takes you, I won't just start a war. I'll end one. I'll tear through every pack that stands between us until I have you back. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I love you too. His kiss was fierce and desperate, the kiss of a man who feared it might be his last. She clung to him as if she could anchor herself to this moment, as if love alone could protect them from what was coming. When they finally broke apart, both trembling, a commotion echoed from the courtyard below. My king! Commander Theron's voice rang through the night. You need to see this. They raced down the stone stairs, Alara's heart pounding with every step. What new horror had Marcus unleashed? Had he attacked early? Had he... She stopped dead at the courtyard entrance. A crowd had gathered around the central fountain, their torches illuminating a figure kneeling on the cobblestones, a woman with lank blonde hair and a dress that had seen better days. Rosalind. And standing before her, accepting her formal pledge, was Commander Theron. What's happening? Alara pushed through the crowd, her blood turning to ice. Rosalind, what are you doing? Her sister looked up, tears streaming down her face but her jaw set with determination. I'm volunteering as your champion. No! Alara's scream echoed off the stone walls. You can't. You're not a warrior. Marcus will kill you. Maybe? Rosalind's voice was steady despite her tears. But I'm also the daughter of the man who sold you. I'm the one who stayed behind while you suffered. I owe you this, Alara. I owe you everything. You owe me nothing. Rosalind, please. It's already done. Commander Theron's voice cut through her protests. She made the pledge. By law, she is now your official champion. Alara whirled toward Kale, desperate, pleading. Stop this. Order her to withdraw. You're the Alpha King. There must be something. There isn't. Kyle's face was carved from granite, but his eyes burned with anguish. Once a champion is pledged, only death or victory can release them. Rosalind rose from her knees, crossing the courtyard to take Alara's hands. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Listen to me, she said quietly. Father destroyed our family. His weakness, his addiction, his greed. He sold you to pay his debts, and I was too blind to see it. I can't undo what he did, but I can end it. I can make sure Marcus never touches you again. By dying? By fighting. Rosalind's smile was sad and beautiful. I may not be a warrior, sister, but I am a survivor. Just like you. She pulled something from her pocket. A small vial filled with shimmering liquid. What is that? Alara breathed. Something I took from Father's study along with the document. Do you remember the stories Mother used to tell us? About the old magic? The forgotten gifts of the moon goddess? Alara's heart stopped. That's a myth. Moon's blood doesn't exist. Father believed it did. He spent his whole life searching for it. Rosalind pressed the vial into Alara's hand. He finally found it, and now it's going to save your life. Rosalind, when the trial begins, you'll know what to do. Her sister kissed her cheek. I love you, Alara. I always have, even when I was too broken to show it. Then she turned and walked toward the warriors' quarters, leaving Alara standing in the torchlight with a vial of impossible magic and a heart full of impossible hope. Dawn was coming, and everything was about to change. 6 months after the trial, Alara stood on the same balcony where she'd once feared losing everything. But everything had changed. Below, Shadowmere's courtyard bloomed with celebration. Wolves danced around bonfires, while children chased each other through crowds of laughing adults. Music drifted up to her, mingling with the scent of roasting meat and fresh flowers. The Solstice Festival. A tradition Alara had revived from the old Moonridge ways. A night to celebrate family, hope, and new beginnings. You're supposed to be dancing, my queen. Kale's arms wrapped around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. She leaned back into his warmth, her hand finding his where it rested on her belly. I was watching, she said. Look, at them, Kale. Really look. He did. And she knew he saw what she saw. Not just warriors and servants, but a pack transformed, a family united. Wolves who had learned that strength and softness could exist together. You did this, he murmured against her ear. All of it. We did it. She turned in his arms, her hands framing his face. I couldn't have healed them without you believing in me first. His silver eyes softened with a love that still stole her breath. I believed in you because you were always worth believing in. The world was simply too blind to see it. In the crowd below, Rosalind danced with Commander Theron, her laughter bright and free. The trial had nearly killed her, but the moon's blood had done its work. She'd emerged stronger than anyone expected, and the gruff commander had been smitten ever since. Even Lord Brennan had unbent enough to smile at the festivities. Not much, but for him it was practically jubilation. Are you happy? Kale asked, the same question he asked every night since they'd spoken their true vows. Alara smiled, thinking of the tiny life growing inside her, the child she'd tell him about tonight, their future, their legacy, their proof that love could flourish even in the darkest places. I'm home, she said simply, and pulled him down for a kiss beneath the stars. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story.